Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 153rd episode of Real Hawk Talk. This is Brian Nemhauser, ad hoc blogger on Twitter. And boy, it has been a minute, Jeff, since we got together. It's almost felt like summertime, where everyone's gone on their own ways and done their own things. But it's not summer. It's like, in fact, it's like barely spring in most places. So, um, glad to be back. Glad to see you. I know Mr. Nathan Ernst will be joining us as well. He was just on, and I think he's having some technical difficulties. But first, let's bring you in, Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. How are you doing, dude?
I'm good, man. It's been a while. What was the last time we were on? Was it the draft night?
It was. It was after their second round pick was the
Yeah.
last time, I think.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while. You got a whole beard now. You got a new look going.
Well, dude, I gotta grow out the pandemic beard. If I don't wear a mask, I can just like kind of cover my face with my beard. It's really convenient.
Yeah, it's usually Nathan with the beards, but he looks pretty clean shaven when he popped on for a second.
It's true. We're gonna have to come back to that, but like he and Evan were very influential in me growing out my beard. My wife's been wanting me to grow a beard out for a long time, and I didn't like it because it always got really itchy. But then they told me about that Zeus shampoo, and it does makes it like so your beard doesn't itch. So it growing out. My whole team at work is like, "Are you really gonna grow that out?" They're trying to be nice about it. They're like, I think they want to tell me that it looks really stupid, but they're trying to be tactful because they know their careers are in my hands. But you know I tell them that Rachel, my wife, is the product manager of my face. She gets to set the priorities, and it's a super tough job. She's not dealt a good hand, but she's doing her best, and she's really the only user that we need to satisfy. So it's going okay. But enough about my beard, dude. What have you been up to? What's been going on with you?
We're still like one of the only cities in North America that's pretty much still in lockdown. So it's been a quiet period of my life where we're watching your country come back to normal. You guys don't have to wear masks if you're double vaccinated. I did get my vaccine a couple weeks ago, my first one. I was a little behind.
Hey.
So that was good. But I remember last year at this time, like Canadians were laughing at Americans for how screwed up you were. And it's funny how things have changed pretty quick now. Canada's become a laughing stock, back to normal. And you see what good leadership does, and we're still stuck inside. So I've been probably following the Seahawks more than I probably should at this time of year.
Well, I'm getting some kind of issues. It sounds like folks are having trouble with YouTube. So see the comments coming in on chat. Nothing different about our setup. So I think this might be an issue with YouTube. So sorry about that. Don't know what to do on our end to try to fix it. If you haven't already, maybe try refreshing, but I'm guessing that's not the issue. So not sure what to say, folks. I hopefully we'll get the rest of this podcast recorded and everyone's saying YouTube is down. Oh man.
Oh, great.
Drat. So some people are saying it's working, other people saying it's not. If I'm playing it for me, for what it's worth, it seems to be working just fine for me. So, maybe it's lagging now. I don't know.
This is great podcast material.
Oh, that stinks. Well, so let's get back into talking about the Seahawks. Hopefully this thing records. It definitely something's weird's going on with YouTube, but some people are hearing us. So,
well, you want me to ask you a question?
I do. Tell me, what's your question?
Okay, let's start this. Have you come around on the Eskridge bet?
Oh, that's a funny question because so let's just recap. People might not have tuned in to our live pod when that pick was made, and I gave a hyperbolic grade, which I'm sure people will react to, which was an F to that pick. And I knew as soon as I said it, and I knew before I said it, that people were going to assume that grade was about Eskridge. And I tried to be clear it wasn't. So like Eskridge could end up being a good receiver. And for that grade to be above an F for me, what has to happen is that the centers that were available for them to pick that ended up going to like Kansas City and stuff, those guys have to be bad.
Okay.
If Eskridge is a good receiver and there's a Pro Bowl center that we passed on, it will still be an F from my perspective. Like, so it's not about Eskridge. I think Eskridge has a chance to be a really good fit, like good player, at a position of need. So like all that's fine. I just fundamentally believe that the center position is a weakness for this team and that they had a potential opportunity to upgrade the line in a way that would have made the line not just good, but potentially great. And I think if you have a great offensive line, I just believe that a lot of other things can click into place. So that it's a positional value thing and an opportunity cost thing that has me critical of their draft strategy there, not of the player.
So long story short, your opinion has not changed.
Nope. Okay. I mean, I'm happy. It seems like Eskridge might be good. Like,
I'm hearing very good things coming out of camp about him, but rookie camp, who the fuck knows?
Well, let's go back to that in a second. Let's welcome in Nathan Ernst at NathanE11. How are you doing, Nathan?
Pretty good, kind of, I guess. Some small technical difficulties and throat difficulties, but hey, I'm here.
Well, it's great to have you. Yeah, let's go back to what you're talking about with Eskridge, Jeff. What are you hearing that's positive?
I'm hearing that, well, we've heard like the reports that he got open deep a couple times. He looked pretty good, but he's playing against like the equivalent of practice squad players. So you obviously don't want to overreact to that. But I heard just from asking around that they were really impressed with just his physical build. Like some people at 5 foot, whatever, 8 or 9, look really small, like a Deshaun Jackson. Apparently, I heard Brady Henderson say the same thing. He came in, he was pretty like thick looking, and he was getting, and like his speed apparently on the field was crazy good. So it's a first impression. It doesn't mean much. Obviously, we've probably heard many stories of guys looking really good in their rookie camp and flaming out pretty quick. But I heard they were really impressed with just his physical stature and how fast he looked in terms of game speed, because they haven't really seen him play in a long time.
Nathan, what are your thoughts so far? Have you read or heard anything about the picks that have changed any of your points of view on who they ended up with?
Not really. I mean, I've obviously watched a lot more of them since they got drafted. I think they're all pretty much exactly as advertised. So yeah, no, nothing's really changed my perspective on these guys yet.
We haven't really talked post-draft. So, we talked about Eskridge, but we haven't talked about the other guys, Trey Brown, cornerback, and Stone Forsythe. So it's not a long conversation to go over the rest of the draft picks. But we also didn't talk about anything UDFAs. Like there was a lot of undrafted free agents and some pretty decent ones. Any of those guys let's take each of the draft picks first. So Trey Brown, cornerback, a little bit smaller, played in a pretty competitive conference, and Pete Carroll said he will be looked at as an outside corner, even though he's a little bit undersized. Any thoughts from you guys about Trey Brown? Jeff, we'll start with you.
For me, like I saw more big picture things. I know there's better people on this site or on Twitter who can give you who can watch film and tell you what Trey Brown's going to be, what he looks like compared to other corners. For me, just him being picked kind of send more of a big picture philosophy change. Like I think Jim Nagy said this a couple of years ago, that they would have never even considered him 4 or 5 years ago. And to me, I thought there were a lot of like big picture, interesting things that came out of this draft. And just looking at Trey Brown, I think DJ Reed maybe changed their thinking or not, or Justin Coleman, but to me, it was just really interesting because they focus so much on arm length to try to get these big, long corners like Trey Flowers, and they've looked at Marquise Blair as maybe an outside guy. It seems that something has shifted in their philosophy, and you can almost look at all 3 picks they've made and kind of take away something big picture wise that has changed in the last couple of years. And for the most part, it does seem for the better because this division is getting faster and you have those small, quick receivers in this division. So to me, that was a really interesting, more philosophical change than anything about Trey Brown specifically.
Anything you want to add to that, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if this is like a trend now, if it's a philosophical change, or if it's just them being willing to be adaptable, which is something that they've done an awesome job this offseason with, right? With the void years and different things that they've been willing to do that they haven't in the past. So I think at the very least, it's a really cool sign of some flexibility for them that we haven't really seen much from in the past. Which I think will only help them, right? And then we'll see if this ends up being more of a, real philosophical change in how they want to approach, cornerbacks or defense.
Yeah, I mean, they did on their undrafted free agents get some at least a taller cornerback. I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think he was one of their priority free agents too.
Yeah, he was over 6 feet and had, I think, 36-inch arms in the whole nine. So, it's not like they're abandoning tall corners. And in fact, Pete and John talked about that in the post-draft presser, that they're still, they still value that. But I think to Nathan's point, they did mention like, hey, DJ Reed, and your point, Jeff, like DJ Reed is proven that they can be effective outside and that they're going to go for the best player that can make an impact. So it's good that they're not being so rigid that they're avoiding what could be like. One of the things I like about the Trey Brown pick is I like guys that have played in competitive conferences and had that chip on their shoulder of being kind of undersized and proven that they can match up with those big guys. I don't know if you saw some of the draft analysts, but they talked about how I can't remember the one guy, I'm forgetting, but anyway, they lowered their grade on a receiver, a highly touted receiver in that conference after watching the tape against Trey Brown.
Was that Tylan Wallace from Oklahoma State?
It might have been.
Yeah, I believe so.
So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that to me is a great indicator of a guy that's going to come in and not be intimidated by anybody. He's already got a chip on his shoulder. He's going to carry that with him, and he's going to be a dog. He's going to be tenacious. And I think that you need that in cornerbacks. And honestly, this defense has needed that in a big way, like for a few years. And last year, you started seeing more of that come out. But, especially with guys like with Jamal Adams. But I think the more guys that are tenacious like that and just fighters, I think it sets the right tone on that defense. I love that from cornerbacks, especially.
And I think the last couple of years, they've focused so much on just specs and size, where to your point, Brian, a guy like Trey Flowers or even Shaquille Griffin to a different extent, they didn't really have that. Mm-mm. And Shaquille Griffin was as much as you could ever ask for in the third round, especially the end of the third rounder. But they sort of lost on corners that they were just so focused on the 32-inch arms and the big corners. And you saw it last year with just DJ Reed. I don't know what kind of production we'll get from him this year over a full season, but just the attitude and the energy was totally different than what they had since they really got rid of Sherman.
One thing to consider, I don't know if it was Wallace that, the whatever site lowered the grade, but Trey called that game out as one of his favorites because he played really well against Wallace. The one thing to consider there is he's 3 years older than Wallace when they played against each other, right? And so, there's a clear advantage there in experience and whatnot, right? Who knows when Wallace is 24 years old, right? He'll have been in the league for 3 years. He'll be coming up on his getting ready to sign his second contract or potentially an extension or something, right? So there's a lot of growth, and that's where the whole age thing comes into play, right? When you start talking about how you evaluate these guys and he played great against tough competition. Well, he only recently really started to play really well. Like he was a late bloomer. So that is, a concern with Brown and everyone really in this draft class that they just took.
The good thing is he'll be older than guys who have been in the league for a while. So maybe that's probably older than Deebo Samuel.
Yeah. I'm curious as we move on to Stone Forsythe, who's the offensive tackle they drafted. Big dude. They've made sure to let everyone know multiple times that he's a big human. And it's interesting. I've heard different pieces here where some people are like, yeah, we had second or third round grades on this guy. Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl, who we've talked about a bunch and has his big influence over Pete and John. He actually said he thought that based on his conversations with NFL execs that Forsythe went exactly where they thought he would go, that he's more of a swing tackle and not a guy that a lot of NFL teams think has starter potential. What is your guys' take on Stone Forsythe, who supposedly is a little bit more accomplished as a pass blocker than he is as a run blocker? Nathan, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I didn't pay enough attention to the entire class, but I thought because he was 6th round, right? That's where they got him?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 2nd round for him would have been high, it seems like, but he seemed like a more mid-round type guy than, late round. And I think he's pretty much exactly his build. Like, he's big and long and pass protects, really well, and isn't like a force in the running game. But from what I saw, I didn't see any big deficiencies or anything. So I don't know. He seems like, I don't know that he has like the highest ceiling. I don't know that we're going to be talking about a guy who is, a top half of the league left tackle in a couple of years, but like, can he have a Brandon Shell type career? Can he get to that level? That feels very achievable for him. So yeah, I think that he's a potential steal, even if he doesn't have like massive, huge upside.
Yeah, I'm kind of, for me, it harkens back to Jamarco Jones, right? 6th round. I think he was a 6th round pick as well. A lot of folks were like, they thought he was, an early round pick and had a ton of potential, but then he had really bad combine results, like epically bad combine results. And he fell. And so he's turned into a very serviceable player. Like, he is a borderline starter. Like, he has started a number of games for the Seahawks, and he's not been a terrible starter. He's not necessarily been like a clear, like, rock solid starter either, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that Jamarco Jones in his career could end up being a starting offensive lineman. I think that's possible. And so that is amazing for a 6th round pick. That's great value for a 6th round pick. And so if Stone Forsythe is going to follow a similar path and he's going to be a swing tackle, and who knows, maybe he ends up as a guard. Like, that's been something we've seen plenty of times as well. He's pretty tall to play guard, but
I don't he's probably too tall to play guard.
But, we'll see. We'll see what his path is. Let's talk about the tackle position a little bit more, though, because it's not just him. There was some conversation. Pete spent a lot of time, I think this was in the pre-draft presser, talking about that he was really disappointed in the fact that they didn't really have competition on the offensive line last year. And in general on the roster, he said, because of the shortened off season and just the fashion of it, they kind of just stuck with a specific set of offensive linemen, and they didn't really give much of a chance to evaluate others. And one of the places he said that he's really looking for competition this year is right tackle. And he mentioned Cedric Ogbuehi competing with Brandon Shell. What's your reaction to that? Like, do you see those guys as comparable players? And are you happy to hear that they're looking at a Ogbuehi and Shell, Jeff?
I thought it was just usual Pete bullshit. I did hear, like, that's not the only person who said that. Quandre Diggs was on, I think, Mike Duger's podcast and sort of alluded to the same thing, that like last year's training camp was really weird because they didn't have time to even gel as players, and like that's one of the reasons he said the secondary was just so screwed up at first because they were all new guys. But like, I think the way he is what he is, I think he's a serviceable backup, and I think he's a guy who can start in a pinch. I don't think he projected. He played okay at the end of the year, but when Brandon Shell was healthy, he looked like a far better player than Cedric Ogbuehi. And to me, yeah, it's one of those things coaches have to say, but as long as Brandon Shell is healthy, because when Brandon Shell came off that injury in the playoff game, he was pretty useless. But first 7-8 games of the year, he projected as probably a top 15 right tackle. So I don't think there's any scenario where Cedric Ogbuehi projects in that level. So I just kind of sort of rolled my eyes at it. I don't know if you guys felt it.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty harsh on Agboyhe last year, Nathan, after the Philadelphia game. I thought that was one of the worst right tackle performances we've seen, and we've seen some really, really bad ones in the past few years. But he redeemed himself in my mind. He didn't become like, oh, this guy's rocket ship to the stars or anything like that. But I was like, okay, he's not a disaster. He's not Jermaine Ifedi level disaster, which is just like every game, you just think that he's a turnstile. But I agree with Jeff. I didn't see him as someone who I'm like, okay, next year he's really challenging Shell. I thought Shell was a pretty clear, clearly separated. What's your take?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can think of is he wants to motivate Shell to like stay in shape and keep pushing. Like, I don't know if that's what it is. I guess that it would have been good to have more competition. Like, that wouldn't have been bad. But I don't see like, oh, they would have come out with it. They would have started Agboyhe the whole year, and it would have been so different or something. Like, I mean, they went back to Shell every time, right? Like, they had an entire season to figure it out. Agboyhe got multiple chances, and I feel like they kept going back to Shell. So I don't really know what would have changed out of all that. So I wonder if he's really just trying to like spook Shell or something. But yeah, I don't really understand it.
We're getting reports that YouTube might be working now. So hopefully folks are able to watch on YouTube, as well as, if you haven't already, facebook.com/hawkblogger. Hawkblogger also has it always live streaming. We multicast on Facebook. Used to work on Twitter. I don't know if it still does. I think it might have stopped, but it used to be on twitter.com, Real Hawk Talk. But in any event, any of the UDFAs that are on your guys' radar? I admit I've not had a chance. I've heard Connor Weddington's name a few different times. I don't know a ton about him. He's a receiver, yes?
He tackled Pete. That was pretty amazing.
What?
Yeah. Oh, have you not seen the video?
No.
It's just going to make you feel bad about yourself, because Pete's 89 years old, and Connor Weddington kind of can't tackle him for a minute, and then he strips the ball and they both dive for it, and like Pete legit kind of dives for the ball and then just like gets up off the ground better than I can right now. So it's actually really impressive. Pete is 25 years old eternally.
Man, if only.
No.
Isn't Connor like, didn't he go to Stanford, or am I thinking of the wrong guy? Yeah,
he's a local Washington
guy, right? And he turned down bigger money to come back to Seattle. I mean, how do we feel about the receiver group?
I feel pretty good about it now. So I don't know that Weddington has much chance at contributing as a receiver this year. He's more of a toolsy special teams guy that, maybe he can be a project or something down the line, I think. Although I say this, not having watched the second of him playing. So take it for what it's worth. Obviously they got Eskridge, and obviously Lockett and, DK are, maybe as good as, 1-2 punch as any receiver in the league. And so you had an Eskridge, and Cade Johnson is really exciting too. He, the guy everyone compares him to is Lockett. Not quite the same athleticism, more like post injury Lockett athleticism, but really, fun player that can stretch the defense deep, make tough catches, go up and get balls. He's really exciting, and they got him as a UDFA. So like, there's a chance between him and Swain that you could have, and Ursua, I guess, is still around. Who else am I missing? There's someone that's still around.
Ursua's a coach now, isn't he? He's in the AARP.
Well, he is in the AARP, but I think he's still playing.
Okay.
No, I guess that's Penny Hart. So they have some options to kind of fill out the back. I mean, there's a little bit of risk here because you're still looking at relying on like a rookie or a late round receiver who's just a couple years into his career. But I don't know. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting just hearing Pete and John talk after the draft, especially the day after the Eskridge pick, where they were just name dropping other receivers. So it sort of made me something click in my head like a couple days later, where their whole offseason plan, where we're like, why are they not signing a receiver? Why are they not signing a receiver? It was sort of like the pass rush thing last year. It was pretty clear what their plan was, and it led into the UDFA. But by not signing the receivers and leaving that group paper thin, just listening to John talk, it seemed like their whole plan, regardless of who fell, they probably ideally want to trade back because they had slotted receiver as their first pick.
Yeah.
That was going to be their first pick regardless. And then they're going to use the fact that they hadn't really added bodies as a UDFA strategy. And they were able to get Cade Johnson, who was one of the top UDFAs available. They got Weddington, and they got that guy from Florida State, the really tall guy. I can't remember his name. Marion Terry, the Ricardo Lockett kind of guy. And all of a sudden, by leaving all those roster spots open, it sort of made sense what they were doing here, because all of a sudden their bottom of their, like the last two spots of their receiver group are much more interesting than they were. And you could have guys on the cheap because they're going to have to pay Metcalf soon. And to have Eskridge and possibly Cade Johnson and maybe one more on dirt cheap deals to match what Lockett and Metcalf are going to be making, the whole thing sort of made sense. And it's why they sort of left that spot blank in the veteran free agency period, because it made them more appealing. And even like, it seems like if they trade back, they were going to take a receiver as well. Like you mentioned, Amari Rogers. I think that would have been their pick from Clemson. So all of a sudden, a group that looked pretty bare, that we were looking like Freddie Swain might become a one receiver, one or two if there's an injury. All of a sudden, it looks really more well-rounded, and it makes a lot of sense where they have complementary skill sets. Cade Johnson can do a little things that some of the other people can, and so could Eskridge. Eskridge's speed is so much different than, say, Freddie Swain. It's a much more interesting group than would have been prior to this draft, where it looked pretty bare.
I think it is notable. I think we started seeing the impact of Shane Waldron on this offense. Like they started taking players that are different than I think they've taken a little bit in the past. Like specifically the receiver position jumps out at me because at least two or three of them have like running back or at least yak kind of resumes. And while the Seahawks, I mean, I think they've more classically gone after, the normal conventional outside receiver and the normal conventional slot receivers. It seems like they do want to bring the wide receiver into the running game. I think would be at least my assumption based on what we've seen from the Rams offense in the past. And I think there's other places that we've seen. I think that is why they didn't draft a center. I think they talked about it in one of the press conferences about they're really hoping that the offensive linemen aren't going to have to block very long. Like that's a significant part of what clearly is their strategy for pass protection. And I don't think that they place a lot of value on the center having to do much in the way that they're hoping that the offense works. And so I don't know, it'll be really interesting to see how Waldron's influence pays off. And what I really hope, what would make this pick like much more palatable for me, is if the Rams very likely could have wanted Eskridge because they were the one pick behind and they drafted a guy that is almost identical.
Well, he said the Rams called him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Eskridge said in his press conference, it might have been a slip up, but he said the Rams called him right before the pick.
I love that. I hadn't heard that. I suspected it, but I hadn't heard confirmation. That's fantastic. I'm very petty. You guys should know that about me by now. Anything that comes into division rivalries or other, I'm just great. Speaking of rivalries, total aside, what the hell's going on with Aaron Rodgers? Like, like, what's the deal there? Like, has there been any progress? Because I thought I saw something like, if people didn't think this was serious, they do now, but I didn't really dig in to find out what happened. Anything new?
Well, I don't know if there's been anything significantly new since, like, it seemed like they all but had a deal done with the Broncos and then backed out at the last second before the draft. I don't know if there's been anything major since then.
No, it's like the Russell Wilson thing, but times 100. But yeah, there's just no Both sides are incredibly stubborn. So we've seen how stubborn the Packers are with how they approach roster building. You know how stubborn and petty Aaron is. So it's just leak after leak and nothing is really moving. So
Yeah,
they're miserable right now, which I kind of enjoy because we have to go through it a little bit.
Huh. Well, part of what made me think about it was seeing a video of Olivia Munn doing cliff diving on TikTok last night, and just remembering how much of an idiot Aaron Rodgers must be to have.
Well, she's involved in a whole other celebrity relationship drama thing now with John Mulaney.
I don't know about that.
Oh, I don't know if we want to do celebrity gossip. You know John Mulaney?
I do. My wife thinks he's hilarious.
He abruptly got divorced like a week ago, announced it, and it sounds like it was pretty one way that he wanted the divorce, and then like 2 days later it came out that he was dating Olivia Munn. So
oh man, that is
I like him now.
I mean, yeah, Olivia Munn's pretty amazing, but that's not a good way to live your life.
That's crazy.
That's not a good human being thing to do. All right. So the chat is hilarious. Similarly, very related to football. I made the point on Twitter that people are not talking about in chat that I mean, is there a better bargain in the world of fruit than a pineapple? Like $2.99 for a full pineapple. Like,
there's a lot of work. You got to put in the work.
Now, see, this is the magic. My nephew bought me one of these things that's like a pineapple core, and you just put it in you cut off the top, you cut off the bottom, then you turn this thing, and it just spins out. It spits out the core, and you just get the rings of pineapple. It takes like 20 seconds.
Really?
It's a life changer, dude. Life changer.
Then you grill it up. You put it on the grill.
Sometimes it's a smoothie thing or just a snack. Like, you put it in the fridge. But I mean, fruit's expensive. Like, and a whole pineapple. But you're right. I think it's the work.
What about bananas?
But
you
said like 8 bananas.
How much, Brian? If you had to guess, how much does a bunch of banana, like a thing of bananas, cost?
I would say like $5.99.
Okay.
Am I right?
I have no idea.
Oh shit! I'm gonna look it up.
Bananas are cheap, man.
Is this real Price is Right talk now?
Yeah. I'm gonna go on Amazon and look this up.
Do people buy bananas on Amazon?
This is what people tune in for, by the way. So, don't you worry about.
It seems like Dana's upset.
What the heck? That can't be right. I just saw a bunch of bananas is $20. That can't.
What?
That can't be right.
No, what is going on?
A single banana at Safeway is 32 cents.
Yeah,
50 cents if you want to be fancy and get it organic.
The organic bananas?
Yeah, they're organic bananas.
Crazy.
Nobody buys those.
Right. All right, we're not going to go farther in this because I'm going down too far down a rabbit hole. But how are we feeling about the roster? Like, we talked about it before the draft. I think running back seems like it's in good shape, right? Quarterback is what it is. What do you want to say, Nathan?
I just love that. That's where you started. You got to start.
How was that your lead there?
Well, it's back of the formation forward. I was kind of thinking. So,
I'm surprised though, because you're comfortable with the running back situation.
Yeah. I mean, what would you expect to see that we don't have?
I don't know. I just thought that you would. Penny, DJ Dallas. Who else are the backups?
I mean,
Collins, Homer.
Yeah, they've got. I mean, Alec Collins is, I think, a total hedge against Penny and a good one. And I'm high on Penny. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be the next great thing, but. And I didn't think it was news at all that they didn't pick up his 5th round option, or 5th year option. Sorry.
You should have won in the 5th round.
Yeah, that is very true. We're all agreed on that. But he was a big play back for them, more than Carson even. So, if he's healthy, I think he's perfect. I prefer him to someone like Carlos Hyde, who I think to me is limited.
You
I
take
know.
it for this.
I'm not a fan. I mean, he's fine. I'm
All
fine.
right. What about the other positions?
Yeah, we're wasting too much time.
Yeah, sorry. So you guys brought me back. I was moving on. Quarterback, I don't think we have to talk about. We've got the guy that's going to be the guy. Receiver, we just talked about. I feel a little differently than you guys. I mean, I think they've got 2 guys and a bunch of question marks. Like there might be guys that are more promising question marks, but I think they got 2 guys and a bunch of question marks. So I don't feel like receiver is anything above like whatever grade you'd give DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett by themselves, which is probably like a B plus. Like if you're looking at like the overall receiver group. So I think there's some questions there. It has some upside. Tight end feels like very solid group, right? Gerald Everett still, I think, probably one of the most forgotten acquisitions of this offseason. And, you got Disley. I think Tyler Mabry is a guy that likely won't make the roster, practice squad kind of guy, but is a blocking tight end that nobody knows about. And the team was super high on, including some of the players were pretty high on him last year. He stuck around from nowhere. So he's a guy I have my eye on coming into training camp that might make some noise. But tight end position looks solid. Offensive line we talked about. Yeah, they did say that they are moving Damian Lewis to left guard. So he'll be next to Dwayne Brown, and they're moving Gabe Jackson to right guard. So he'll be next to Cedric Abwehi or Brandon Shell. Any thoughts about, is that registered to you guys at all as meaningful news that Damian Lewis is moving over next to the more seasoned vet and Dwayne Brown? Like anything that you think that unlocks for the team in terms of those 2 pairing up more?
It's really more about just where Gabe wants to be, right? Isn't that why the changes happening? I don't know the same thing really do with Lewis.
Is that where Gabe Jackson played exclusively for? I mean, I thought he played both spots.
He played. No, I can't remember. He played on one side for a long time and then had moved recently, and I don't remember which one, from where to where he moved. I want to say he had been a right guard and then was moved to left guard, and now he's going back to right guard, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think he has moved around a little bit. By the way, there's lots of conversation about John Mulaney still going on in chat, and Stan Van Gundy has joined our chat and has been wonderfully contributing in Super Chat, which we appreciate. He has a real problem with Canadians, though, Jeff. He is railing against Canadians. He does not like Olivia Munn because she's Canadian, apparently. So, I don't know what to do about that, but you should know that there's some Canadian hate and shade being sent over the internet.
That's fair. But John Ryan's Canadian.
John Ryan is Canadian. So, yeah, I mean, I don't offensive line wise, they did make a big deal about Ethan Posic's going to battle with Kyle Fuller. I did not hear Phil Haynes' name. My ears were all like perked, like just say the name and I'll like forgive everything. And no, they didn't say the name. So I do want to know where Phil Haynes fits in. I'm hoping that he gets a shot, but offensive line, you guys feel pretty good about that, where they are heading into camp?
Go for it, Jeff.
It's solid. It's not spectacular. I think, like we said, I think you see the influence of Shane Waldron and how they're building things. I think it really much resembles how the Rams have built their offensive line. Dwayne Brown is sort of their version or our version of Andrew Whitworth. The guards are pretty solid. Like Roger Saffold was probably their best guard they had in the McVay run there. Our guards are probably better players or similar players to Roger Saffold in terms of Damian Lewis. Hopefully his pass protection improves. The center is just the guy. They have like street free agents, essentially, veteran street free agents. And the right tackle is more of a mauler. And it's very similar built to what the Rams did. And you can see just across their offense, it just seems like that was their model. It's the team that beat them last year. And it looks very similar to those couple of Rams offensive lines. I don't think they're going to be as good as the one they went to the Super Bowl with, but I think it'll be functional, and I don't think it'll be bad. So I think that's fine.
I think that the offensive line is good. My biggest issue with the offensive line is that I think it's been assembled in a bit of a short-sighted way. I think it's good next year. I don't know if it's good in 2 years or good in 3 years. And Like Brandon Shell, he's on the last year of his deal. I don't know that he's like the guy you want to extend and keep around forever. Like, I don't know, he's that guy. Ethan Posick, we've talked about a lot. I don't know. He's a guy that you want to keep around forever. Dwayne Brown is on the old side. Don't know how long he's going to be around. So there are some like just roster construction parts of the offensive line I have questions about, which is another reason I really wanted them to draft a stud center to build around. But that's my main question offensive line wise. Otherwise, starters, I think they're solid. I think people are actually like way more negative about the offensive line than they should be. I think that's based off of history more than it's based off of last year, to be totally honest. So offense in general, you guys feeling like this offense heading into camp is better or worse than the offense that the Seahawks ended last year with?
I think it's quite a bit better, right?
Yeah.
I think the offensive line is better. I mean, they've upgraded with Gabe Jackson, and it's otherwise the same. I think Everett. I mean, Olsen. Olsen didn't work out, and there's lots of reasons for that. Disley maybe isn't rebounding back to the guy he was. So, like, it was a really disappointing spot last year. Everett should improve that, and then Disley has a chance to get better. Who knows what you get out of Parkinson? And yes, there's still a lot of questions about the depth in the receiver room, but it's not like that with the strength of the team last year. So I don't know that it's like a ton better, but I think it's better, and I think it should be able to weather some storms maybe better than last year's group did. Yeah. Just in terms of like injury nutrition.
Yeah, I thought last year, and the biggest thing, they had no counterpunch once people took away DK and Lockett. And I hammered on the show pretty much every week. It just felt like every big moment. Jacob Hollister or David Moore were the key players on so many third downs and so many big spots. And to go from those two guys to potentially Dwayne Eskridge, who there are questions about, but you can see what he does well and where he fits. And add him and Gerald Everett and hopefully get more of Disley, and Chris Carson and Penny are back. I think personnel-wise, they're much better suited in terms of having that counterpunch, having Dwayne Eskridge and Everett instead of Hollister and Moore. To me, that's a pretty big upgrade.
Yeah. I'll keep coming back to, I think the biggest upgrade of the offense is the play caller.
Yep.
and the scheme. I just don't think that we can really overestimate how much of a difference that could potentially make. If you get Russell Wilson in an offense where he's getting rid of the ball faster and he's not getting sacked. I mean, guys, he's been sacked like 40 plus times pretty much every year. I mean, sometimes 50 plus times. If you somehow are able to get that down to the low 30s, which is not an insane goal. Like, it's not like all of a sudden they're the top, the least sacked quarterbacks are going to be sacked in the teens, like in any given year. I don't think that's realistic, but if you get it down to the low 30s, those are, how many plays are those, that were negative plays, moving behind the sticks, potentially causing turnovers and other things that will now at worst be incompletions, hopefully, or not a loss of yards. So I think that could be huge for this team. I think the other thing that this team has not typically done well is get players the ball in space and give them an opportunity to run after catch. Like, that has not been something we've seen a lot of. DK Metcalf, he had a few plays last year where he caught the ball on one side of the field, ran completely across the field and around and cornered and got all the way to the end zone. Like, I mean, he just made them run after the play catches on his own. What does it look like if he's in an offense where it's built for him to have a little bit more space, and maybe he is getting a chance to do more crossing routes than we saw from him? Or what does it look like if Russell is having to pass it 2 yards in order to gain 15 instead of always having to throw it 50 yards in the air to get the big plays? So I not to mention Gerald Everett and all that, like, there's so many things there that I just don't think we know. And I also don't think we really know what Chris Carson's going to look like in this offense. Like, personally, I think it much better fits Rashad Penny, his style of running. Like, you give Rashad Penny a gap and counters to run in. Like he is pretty explosive when he has a hole to run through. He's just not really a tackle breaker is what he hasn't really shown. So anyway, I think that that's going to be a huge thing that we won't really know till it gets on the field, but I agree with you guys. Personnel wise, it's at least as good. It seems like it's better. And I think the scheme is going to be a big potential upgrade. Defensively, they've got 10 cornerbacks on this roster. And that's not including Marquise Blair or Ugo Amadi, who are both expected to play corner, right? They have 10 corners, but do you feel good about them?
I mean, I don't think I can name more than 4 of them if you're not including Ugo and Blair.
I know.
Right.
Who are they?
Let's pull them up.
There's DJ, there's Flowers, there's Brian Mills, which is the UDFA they just signed. There's
Kello.
Oh yeah, Kello. Yeah, Kello.
Say Trey Brown.
Huh?
Trey Brown, did you name?
Oh yeah, Trey Brown. Yeah. Okay.
I want the 6. Who are these others for?
Pierre Desir.
Oh, Pierre Desir. That's right.
Gavin Heslop. Brian Mills is one of the big name UDFAs they signed. He's the 6'1" guy. Ryan Neal, who we talked about. Demarius Randall. What's that?
Neal's a safety, right? Or are they moving him?
No, he's a safety.
He's listed as a corner on the roster, but
okay.
Yep. Demarius Randall, DJ Reed. Savion Smith is a guy we didn't mention. They picked him up from, what was it, Indianapolis?
I think Dallas.
Dallas? All right, that's right. He was
I don't know anything about him.
Akella Witherspoon. Forgot about him. I admit it's been a little while. I've been pretty excited about him. Jordan Miller.
Okay.
I think that's it. But I mean, that's so yeah, let's count that up. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. If you count Ryan Neal as a safety, then that gets it back to 10. But then you're talking about Blair and Amadi. You're back up to 12.
That is that's the equivalent of the Seahawks receiver group without DK and Tyler.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of fantasy football and the guys that constantly are like, I'm going to trade you 5 of my players for DK Metcalf.
Right.
It's going to be great. You're going to get 5 guys that are totally mediocre for your great player. And the rule in fantasy football, right, is whoever gets the best player wins the trade. It does not matter how many other guys you can pile a bunch of B's together. And if you're getting an A in return, it's a good trade. So I see in that list, like, I don't know if there's a single A in that list.
No.
Oh no. Oh no.
I don't know if there's a B in the list.
Yeah, I don't.
I think DJ Reed's at least a B.
I think he's at best a B. I mean, he looked good at times last year. He also looked bad at times last year, and he played, he didn't play a full season. Like, there's a lot of questions, a lot yet to be seen from DJ Reed.
I think that's fair. I think his performance last year was at least a B.
Once he settled in, that Buffalo game was really bad.
But what was that over? Like 3 games, 4 games? Like,
yeah, he played when he moved to outside at the end of the year. He played really well.
Yeah,
but when he was playing inside, and that Buffalo game specifically, it was really bad.
Everybody looked like an ass in that.
That was the most ass secondary game I could ever.
Yeah, that was bad. Beyond that, I mean, Witherspoon when he's healthy, I think, I think he has higher upside, but he's at least a B- kind of corner. So I mean, but I think that's the point, right? Like, this is part of why, I mean, Pete talked about that he's been in contact with Richard Sherman, but they're not looking to add corners. He was pretty clear about that. And the way I interpreted what Pete was saying is they're going to get all the way into camp before they would even consider Sherman. If Sherman was around, that they'd maybe look at it then. I don't know if Sherman's going to be available that long. We'll find out, but it doesn't look like a move they're going to make, and I think it's a mistake. I think this team would have a much better chance of winning if they brought, even if they brought Richard Sherman in as a vet and he was just coaching some of these guys or helping to bring them up. I just think I think it's a miss to have a guy like that sitting out there and not add him to your roster when both sides are positive about each other. And you can figure it out you have leverage from a contract perspective. I don't get it because I don't look at this list of corners and see Jeff I'm like, yeah, we're good. We're good.
Yeah, I was looking at the roster a couple days ago. I had the exact same thought. I don't understand why they aren't bringing him in because say DJ Reed takes one spot down and then I guess Witherspoon would be the early favorite to get the other spot. Say he plays left corner. I think he has pretty good upside, Witherspoon, but his performance fluctuates like crazy. So just in the event that say he gets injured or say he doesn't perform well, who's your backup there? Is it Trey Flowers? Is it Trey Brown? Are you comfortable with that? To me, they talk about competition. Sherman's the perfect guy for this kind of scenario for me. Like you have him compete. If Witherspoon comes out and wins one of the jobs, then that's great. That's a great free agent signing. You can maybe have Sherman and Witherspoon. If Witherspoon and Reed are your best corners in camp, that's a great situation. But to me, if Sherman's price point is, he can't have a high price point right now. He's got no market. He's still sitting out there. We thought the draft might be a move point for him, but didn't. To me, if they need a veteran experience, they need someone who can play and sort of develop to the next phase. And they don't really have that starting caliber player that you can rely on. So to me, it's sort of a no-brainer to sign them. I don't really understand their logic because most of the guys at the bottom of their roster look like special teams players. And if money's an issue, you can cut Trey Flowers, save $2 million, I think, and bring Sherman. So Flowers in the last year of his deal, they're not going to re-sign him most likely unless he has a crazy spike in performance. To me, the roster sets up perfectly to bring in Sherman. I don't really understand their resistance to it.
I mean, it takes two to turn the keys, though, right? I mean, two people have to turn the keys. So, for all we know, like, it would not surprise me if Pete said, "Hey, we'd love to have you come in. We can't guarantee you any playing time," right? And Sherm's like, "Cool, that might be an awesome opportunity for me." In about 6 weeks or whenever we start to get into training camp, and no one else has offered me a starting job, right? I mean, Sherm has a lot of years left that he can coach. He doesn't have a lot of years left that he's going to be able to play. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's just waiting to, find a spot where he can maybe find a team that's got some, chances of, playing the playoffs and he can get some regular playing time and really contribute, as opposed to just, coming into the Seahawks job. And, it's not crazy to think that between Trey Brown, DJ Reed, Kello, Flowers even, right? And who knows if Blair gets a look outside. Sherman could get cut, right? He could have come here without any kind of guarantee to be a good team player, and then they got to cut him, right? At in the middle of preseason, and then who knows what the situation is. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a Seahawks, it doesn't make any sense for the Seahawks not to do this. I think that, if it was lined up exactly the way we're saying it, they probably would. But I don't know. That's a great deal for sure.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think this is one of those things that people are going to look back on. He's going to end up with some team and he's going to be really good. And we're going to be biting our nails on game day, hoping these guys can cover. And I mean, it might work out. I mean, I've been very positive in general about how they've handled the cornerback position. Thank God that they didn't sign Shaquille Griffin. We were all, super supportive of that choice and what it opened up in other parts of the roster. But, I'm looking at Gavin Heslop and, Brian Mills and, these are very hopeful. This is like a collection of names that you're just hoping that someone pops. And what were we going to say, Jeff?
I was going to say it's sort of like how they handled defensive end last year. It
Exactly.
Sort of reminds me of that.
Exactly.
But I do think on the most I don't think there's a huge gap between what Griffin's been the last couple of years and what Witherspoon can be. I don't think there's a huge gap there. But I worry that they're overly optimistic in what they have there, sort of like the defensive end group last year. We saw how that gone when people were asked to do things that they're just not capable of doing. We saw how bad it was until Dunlap came in.
So a couple more things. I know oh, sorry, Nathan, were you going to say something?
I kind of want to just throw this out here. So in, 4 months, whatever, I can look smart. Is the obvious Dunlap for this cornerback group Stephon Gilmore? Is he the guy that they get 6 weeks into the season and they flip a 5th round pick to the Patriots for Gilmore?
That would be incredible.
Well, I don't know if Gilmore is the name, but I had the exact same thought. Like, first, what Jeff said, which is like, this feels like their approach to defensive line last year, number one. And number two, if that's the case, and they're basically leaving some powder dry to potentially find someone to complement, who would that be? And so that's a good name, but it feels like we should brace for them to find out that this journeyman approach to the cornerback position is not a recipe for making a good secondary. And they will have to potentially upgrade some other way. And maybe that will be Sherman still, who knows if he'll be available, but otherwise, yeah. Like, why Gilmore? What makes you say that?
Well, he was getting shopped last year. There was serious talk about whether they were going to move him, and I think his play had kind of fallen off a little bit. Who knows what his situation is with where that team is right now. So the team's still bad. They were already looking at shopping at him. I think he's last year's deal. So he's one of those guys that could be a very like Dunlap type situation. Now, can you actually get him for something 6th round pick, right? Or is he going to be more like a Clowney thing or even more, right? I mean, he's got huge name recognition, right? But I think if we had said, at this point last year that, oh, don't worry, they're going to trade a 7th round pick for Carlos Dunlap, we'd been laughed at, right? And that worked out. So who knows? Maybe it's not Gilmore. I think they have another corner that is in the same situation on the Patriots, and there's lots of teams out there, right? So
holy crap, 2 things that we didn't talk about. I don't know if you guys could stick around a couple more minutes, but one, not that big of a deal, but worth just saying, Darrell Taylor looks like he's gonna be playing Sam.
Pretty big deal.
I think that's a pretty big deal, and don't know if you guys have any points of view on that. I think if he's exclusively playing Sam and is not a rush end, they've said he's going to do both. But if his like contribution is just playing the Sam linebacker role, that will have been a messed up pick.
I think Derek's head might explode if that's the case.
Yeah. Like, I don't quite buy the Bruce Irvin role that he'll play there and then play rush end, because they've got so many other rush ends. It feels like this is maybe a bit of a hedge. My initial take is he's probably going to be a Sam linebacker for a while and not be a rush end.
That's also the clearest path for him to get on the field and play. Like, they have a deep edge group, right?
Exactly.
And so, I don't know if it's a hedge as much as it is he's athletic and big, and we don't have any other real Sam linebackers. So yeah, go for it. Let's see what you can do, right? Because you're probably going to have to be battling for, pass rush snaps for a little while.
Other big news, if I can move on, is the schedule.
Oh yeah, sure.
We didn't talk about the schedule. And one of the first things I saw about the schedule was Colts reporters or Colts bloggers, whoever they were, like, super happy that they get to start the season against the Seahawks, and like that the Seahawks have a shitty defense and like a bad offensive line and a perfect chance for the Colts to start 1-0. What the hell? Like, why do people think the Seahawks are bad? Like, around the league, like, the respect has completely eroded for the Seahawks. They won 12 games last year.
I think the Russell Wilson story really changed the perception of the Seahawks nationally. And like I saw the other day, one of the national reporters wrote they had like a disaster of an offensive line, and then that stuff with the Colts reporter. I think people remember that Rams game where they got killed by Jared Goff with 4 fingers. I think that led to Russell Wilson sort of tirade, and I think the perception of the Seahawks, like, I think there's a huge difference between how the Seahawks offseason went from a local perspective versus national. Even if you hear some like the most harsh beat writers, they're pretty positive about how the offseason went. But if you hear some of the national guys talking about the Seahawks, you saw with that Colts thing, it's like they've become like the Eagles or something. And to me, like, I don't get it. I guess they're just not following that closely, or maybe they just, I don't know. But I totally saw the same thing.
Was there something about the schedule that stuck out to you guys? I'll tell you, like, starting with three or four on the road, some pretty tough games in there. That stuck out to me. It looks like a tough start to the season.
Yeah, that was my take. The start looks really tough, but you don't play like a quarterback in that stretch. But the end looks pretty good. So this happens to a lot of Seahawks schedule where they want to. Unfortunately, it's going to play into probably Pete's approach where you can't win in the first quarter, and it's going to annoy everyone. But the end of the schedule, you have Houston, you have Chicago, and you have Detroit. So those Houston and Detroit are probably two of the worst three rosters in the NFL, especially if Watson doesn't play. So if you just get through the beginning of the year, it could be really good, sort of this year, right? Where they had all those NFC East games, which helped them win the division. I think it could be a similar thing. But the beginning of the year is just tough physical teams, back to back to back. But the good thing about the Colts in week one is their left tackle retired, and they signed Eric Fisher from the Chiefs, who tore his Achilles. So he's not going to be ready for week one. So if you're asking for a time to play Carson Wentz, who's in the first game of the new team with no left tackle, and you've seen how he's done with bad pass protection, you couldn't have asked for a better time to play in from our perspective.
I am always asking for a time to play Carson Wentz. Schedule me to play Carson Wentz. And by me, I mean, of course, the athletic group of people who play football for the Seahawks, not me personally.
They represent you, Nathan.
Did you guys notice? So there's actually, I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but there's a mistake on the Seahawks schedule. So if you go through and you count up all of their games, they actually have them scheduled for 17 games, which can't possibly be right. That has to be a mistake somehow, right?
Yeah, because why would anyone play 17 games? Like, it's an odd number. It ruins like all sorts of records that have been taken up for so many years. Like, that can't be right.
8 anymore.
No, there's no 500 record. There will not be a 500 record.
Can't do it. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see which game they drop when they fix that.
So they start at the Colts 10 a.m. game. They play at home against the Titans. That's gonna be a fun game, actually. I'd be looking forward to watching the Titans. They've been an interesting team to watch. They play at the Vikings, which is gonna be tough. At the 49ers, like, that's just a tough 5 games. Then they play home against the Rams, tough. And then they go at the Steelers, not easy. Home against the Saints. Saints should be mediocre this year, most likely. I mean, they have some good talent, but Drew Brees retiring is a big deal. Home against the Jaguars, kind of cool to see Lawrence play. Right? He's there.
Bevel and Shoddy reunion game.
Bevel, Shoddy, and like half the Seahawks are down there. A bunch of like my favorite running back plays there, doesn't he?
Yeah, Hyde is there.
Hyde's there.
Does Quill get a pick? Does Quill get an interception against Russell?
Oh man,
I mean, Russell can throw at him repeatedly and never worry about it getting picked off. It might be well covered, but he will never turn around to pick off the ball. At the Packers, that could be a pretty easy game, right?
I mean, if Aaron Rodgers retires, I guess.
Yeah, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play for them, like, what are the Packers without Aaron Rodgers?
How many games can you go with like holding out before you like lose your
8
season? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he would have come back the week before.
Oh, classic.
Jaguars, yeah. Yep. So
I'm hoping that it doesn't get resolved, but then they're home against the Cardinals, tough. At Washington, people are like, Washington's like some powerhouse now. They have Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. I just don't get why everyone's like, I mean, they were decent last year with Dwayne Haskins, right? Was their quarterback.
Wow.
We played them.
So
But we almost lost to him.
fair.
Yeah.
49ers at the Texans should hopefully be an easy game. At the Rams, tough. Home against the Bears, we'll find out. Maybe we can see Fields play that game. Home against the Lions. Jared Goff, maybe with all his fingers, and then at the Cardinals to end. There's not like a real comfy stretch in there.
Texans, Bears, Lions. That's the only one.
Yeah. Well, that's not even 3 in a row. It's 3 out of 4. You get the
pretty good
Rams in there, but and as far as I don't know if you guys travel for games sometimes, right? Like go to an away game. Fun kind of collection this year. I don't think I've been to Indianapolis, seen a game there. Wouldn't super recommend it, to be honest. At Minnesota is interesting. That one's in September. If you haven't been to Minneapolis, I'm a huge fan. Like, it is a fun city. Great music, great bar scene. Totally underrated. I mean, this is where Prince is from. Like, they literally, like, there's a lot of good music there, and like a lot of good beer too. So and they got a new stadium. So like that one's, I think, a pretty appealing game to go to. At Steelers, I've never been to a Steelers game. At some point, I would like to see a Steelers home game. At Green Bay, anytime you can go to Green Bay, especially if you can get a win, it'd be fun. It is a little bit later. It's in November.
In November in Green Bay.
Yeah, it sounds like a great trip.
The biggest challenge with Green Bay is you have to fly into Milwaukee, and it's just a bear to get to Green Bay. Honestly,
it's like a 2-hour drive from there.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, I'm not doing
Washington. Yeah. I mean, DC is great. People are going. What's the deal about the Texans? Dayna, like Will, like everyone's going. Josh are all going to the Texans game. Like, oh, you can go to Houston or whatever. Like, why do you want to go to Houston? I don't understand. Like, I've flown through there. It's like a big concrete jungle. Like, what is there that why would I want to go there?
Maybe they want to see a win, guaranteed win. I don't know.
Tyrod
Taylor and Mark Ingram. And
well, so before we piss off Houston, I think Dayna did say that they have a huge Seahawks fan base, right? Isn't that what she was saying? That there's like a big
Seahawkers. I think the Seahawks. I don't know if they have a Seahawks big fan base, but I think maybe it's the Seahawkers every year pick a road game that they go to. This might be the one.
Okay.
I don't know, but I know that happens.
I see.
Someone's telling me that Houston's a fun ass city. I don't know. I mean, I'll give it a shot, but it's not on this list so far. It's pretty low, like of places to visit. I don't know. And then I do want to see the new Ram Stadium. Like, LA is a good spot to go in December, like right before Christmas. Not a bad time to be in LA and that new stadium. And then the final road game, I think we're going to see each other there, right? I think we're planning to maybe go to Arizona in January. Like, not a bad time to go to Arizona. And we win there a lot. And I think that's one of the more fun places to go. It's cheap to go from Seattle, and the pregame spots are great. Like, cheap in general, like to stay in Arizona. So they're probably still gonna be counting votes when we're there. But otherwise, it's a fun place to be.
What percent chance do they go 2, 3, 4, 5, 0-6 to start the year?
What percent chance?
Yeah,
0-6. I think it's
Colts, Titans, Vikings, Niners, Rams, Steelers.
Say 1.
1%.
Yeah, they have the better quarterback in almost every game. As good as those teams are, it's Carson Wentz, Ryan Tannehill, who lost Jonnu Smith as offensive coordinator, and Corey Davis. Then it's who's the third one? Kirk Cousins. Then it's Jimmy G, potentially, or a rookie. As hard as those games are, Seattle's got a major quarterback advantage every game, right? To lose all of those games, even Ben looked like shit last year. Like, his arm was falling off, and their team got a lot worse. If they lose every one of those games, either Russell got injured or something went really, really wrong. I don't see 0-6.
Yeah, I don't think Nathan's necessarily saying it's likely, but there's not an easy game in that.
No, I would agree with that. If you're saying 2-4.
I think the big hurdle is the Colts game, or the big thing there is not hurdle, but the easiest game there is the Colts game, right? I mean, very easily they come out 1-0 on the gate, right? But then past that, like, I mean, if they lose the Colts game, they could at least pretty easily end up 0-5, right? I mean, the Steelers, we'll see what they are. But
That home opener should be interesting with the fans back.
I think they could beat the Titans.
The Titans roster got a lot worse, and they lost. Arthur Smith is a big part of Tannehill's development. I'm really interested to see what happens.
And Corey Davis.
They lost Davis, Jonnu Smith. Their offensive.
Davis went back. Where did Davis go?
The Jets.
New York, I thought.
He's the new number 1 receiver for the Jets. Yeah. So, and they didn't replace him. They signed Josh Reynolds. That's it.
And I also think the Vikings are beatable. Like, if I was like, just sweep aside my emotional side of this, which is hard to do, but I am capable if I really try. I look at that and I'm like, 3-3 seems totally realistic.
Yeah, it's sort of.
I think if I was a betting person, I would say 4-2.
Are you happy with 3-3?
I wouldn't be happy with it, but I think that that's the minimum bar if you want to have a chance at a productive season. But yeah, I think if I was to just really play the probabilities, I think 4-2 is what I would guess out of that first 6 games. And if you did that, then the season's open for you, especially if 2 of those 4 wins come against the Rams and the 49ers.
I would say what the Niners are this year is going to make a huge difference. I mean, obviously you play them twice, so there's that, but like, just the upside that they have, if they can reclaim what they were 2 years ago, or, even close, right. And just be a really good team again. Or they're, kind of a dumpster fire like we saw last year. That's a huge swing in what this schedule ends up looking like.
Yeah. I think they're by far the best setup for 2022 and beyond in the division. 2021 is mystery, but they look really well set up to be the team to beat for the foreseeable future. This might be the last chance for a while.
Why can't we have the AFC East? I know it's like for 2 decades, Brady and Belichick got like just the easiest Dolphins teams and mostly crappy Bills teams and mostly crappy Jets teams. Like, it wasn't even just one of them at a time. Like, half their division was just like bottom feeders. I mean, not only do the Seahawks have the toughest division in football, but these guys, like, they make their team, like, they keep making good moves. Like, they're making, for the most part, pretty smart moves. And I think you could say that every single team in the division made a pretty significant step forward this offseason. Like, that sucks because
it's terrible.
They were tough last year. And the 49ers were pretty tough, even though they lost most of their team to injury. So it's going to be brutal. But the Seahawks were king of that division. I mean, as much as we crap on them, they won that division. So, like, it's easy. I think people tend to get a little bit negative about the Seahawks. This show never does. We're always positive. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's impossible to predict NFL schedules. Injuries, so much changes. Like, we just don't know. But it, on its face, looks like a tough schedule. It does not look like an easy, path to a division title type of schedule. All right. We've gone past an hour. Thankfully, YouTube finally kicked in. I'm very hoping that, crossing my fingers, that the whole audio recorded so we can publish it to SoundCloud later. But if folks ever have this problem again, you can always go to facebook.com/hawkblogger. We multicast there every show, not new for this one, always there. And there is comment threads there as well. And go to patreon.com/hawkblogger. Sign up, get access to the Slack channel, active conversations, fantastic offseason stuff. I'm still getting a lot of my offseason news there. In fact, I got fooled. Guys, I got fooled because someone in our patron chat in Slack
Don't blame it on the patrons.
They posted
Come
a
on.
link from the Seahawks PR about, I think, KJ Wright signing. And I think I went on and talked to you guys about it, and all of you just laughed at me. And I was like, oh, God darn it. So I trust the patrons to be that filter of quality of the news, and they failed me there. But in general, it's a fantastic source to stay up with what's going on with Seahawks. Easy to get in there. Happy to have you. And then also click the like button, please. I know we had some trouble today. That's not our fault. YouTube's a big part of Google. They should fix this themselves. We can't handle it, but please give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already, because our schedule's a little bit off. I'll admit, guys, I'm the problem. At least on Wednesdays, I've got my golf league on Wednesday nights, and to be totally honest, it's a higher priority to me than the podcast during the off season. That's a horrible thing to say to this group, but golf is kind of an obsession right now. So it takes. And I'm winning some money too. We took home the title a couple weeks ago. So I think we got like $40. It was great. All right. If you guys haven't, click subscribe, click like, patreon.com/hawkblogger. We will be back with you whenever we feel like we can be. We're never going to be very non-committal for a little bit, but going to try to be back as soon as there's news to talk about. We will try to get on and talk about it, and appreciate all your patience. Hope you're all having a wonderful spring, getting outside if you're in Seattle, enjoying some of the weather, and we will be back to you as soon as possible. So until then, go Hawks.